It's time for a masterclass. Here's a guy who was a little bit good. Here's with Mark.
That's spot on, Pom. He was sure good. Let's wind back the clock to November 2004 when Hashim Amla made his debut in Calcutta for South Africa. What a fabulous experience for this enormously gifted young player. At the time, of course, there were all sorts of things asked about an unusual technique, and particularly the takeaway and pickup of the bat, but nobody doubted the remarkable ability to time the ball, to bat long, to play the hardest moments successfully, to play all types of bowlers with slick footwork, to be prepared to take them on when need be and defend as if it was the ultimate in faith. Fabulous player with a fabulous record, almost averaging 47 in Test match cricket, and he's here with me now, out in the middle at Newlands, where he played plenty of fine innings, looking very smart in borrowed kit from the South African dressing room. Ash, that must be lovely, watching all those days ago.
Well, when I saw it earlier in the footage you were showing us on the top, I laughed. And you asked me why I laughed. It's just amazing. Look at yourself 18 years ago. And the nerves that I did feel on the debut. And yeah, a little bit, more tighter skin and that type of thing. So it was just, it's cool to see.
Quite an overwhelming experience in many ways, walking to the middle. And we see you taking guard. So let's start with your guard and stance, because people out there will be fascinated by your grip and your stance. Let's have a look.
Okay, Mark, the first thing I did was, towards the end of my career, I can't really remember during the start of it, but at the end I took a leg stump guard, and I'd make a mark on my off stump, just to, whilst I'm looking down, I can have a look of where the stumps are basically in relation to where I am. I found it just helped me, gives me a better understanding of where the off stump was. And I went through different phases throughout that, of where I stand. Sometimes I stood outside leg stump, because I had a trigger movement that took me to almost middle stump or off stump. And when I first started my career, there was no movement. I stood still, and I tried to, as you watch the ball, and then react to it. And as time went on, it kind of developed.
Look, quite a strong top hand there, and not literally around the back of the bat, but
yeah.
a weaker top hand would have the hand further that way and a stronger one that way.
Yeah,
so yeah, I suppose you're sort of somewhere in the middle.
That's a funny one, because you get taught to put the bat down, almost like a tennis grip the bat and play like that. And the higher you go, the more you play, you start finding a range where you think you can play a lot more shots, because this kind of grip does restrict you in playing a little bit square on the offside. It makes it very comfortably through the onside, but square on the offside is a bit restricted, so you end up opening up, and I think that's what I did. I opened up a bit just to access the offside a little bit more.
Did you find, as your career evolved, that your grip changed much?
I think it did change. Mainly because of the conditions.
Right.
And also with the change of formats with white ball cricket, playing the one-days and T20s, I tended to open my blade a lot more because of the nature of trying to carve the ball through the offside.
Yeah.
So I ended up opening the blade. As you can see when you stand there, the blade's a little bit more open, and also you can run the ball down to third man because the blade's already semi-open.
Yeah.
And the change was, when you go back into Test cricket, is to not continue with that blade, because I felt that was made me more susceptible to the nick off.
Okay, tell me about the triggers.
So I'd stand outside leg stump, and ideally I wanted to, my first step was a step back, and I used to have a slight marker in my head that the step back shouldn't be more than my foot length almost, because I don't want to be going too deep, and which sometimes it happened in the career, especially when there were a lot of nerves, and you know, like things were not as fluent as normal. So I try and keep a marker of getting my step back, the back leg.
As far as that, so it's probably 2 feet, that, isn't it?
Yeah, 1 foot from the popping crease.
Yeah. Okay.
So I try to go there, and I'd bring my left leg. Now the left leg was the front leg, obviously. I played around with it, also depending on conditions. There were times where I wanted it slightly closed off. Many times I heard coaches say, don't close off, but I felt I played my best when it was slightly closed off and my toe pointing towards mid-off, or just to the left of mid-off. Because that allowed me to kind of lean into the ball when it was on the offside, and also made it easier for me to suck my leg back when the ball was straight.
And why, you say when you started at international level, you just stood dead still. Why did you evolve into a user of 2 triggers there? Was that something you learned from Callis or de Villiers, or something you evolved yourself?
No, I learned it from Jacques Callis. He was the first guy who I remember seeing have a trigger movement, and I thought, let me try it out. So when I started, I played 3 tests, you know, and I didn't get many runs in those 3 tests, and then I was sacked after that. So when I went back, the feet movement were not the issue at that time. The big talk was about the back lift.
Yes, so let's do that then. Let's go to that, because you took it out here, towards second or third slip and looped it back. Now look, so Donald Bradman and Viv Richards took it to second slip and looped it back. So it's but you've got to loop it back down the line, haven't you? That's the key.
Yes, if your technique or if your natural flow is a loop, then yes. I'm not sure how I developed that loop.
Just show us it. Just give us a little, because we'll have a look at some vision soon.
And that loop didn't generally happen as the ball was released. There'd be a slight movement like that.
Yes.
And then hopefully the bat came down in a nice line. Sometimes it wouldn't come down, and I'd hope that I'd just get out of trouble. But ideally it was to get a loop and then a flow. The last bit.
So did you feel no, you take it. So did you feel this move here? Just give me that move again. Yeah. So you're out here, almost pointed to gully.
Yeah.
And then take me through the rest of the loop. Right. So that's the key thing here.
Yes.
You're pushing this back here, so not cocking it all. A bit of a flow there, a bit of width.
And those are things that you get introduced to by different coaches about the cocked wrist. I remember when the Australian team was in its prime, and one of my all-time favorites, Ricky Ponting, was batting. They used to talk about a cocked wrist, and he almost a foot up in the air. So you end up playing around with that, and when it doesn't stick with you, it's probably too unnatural for me. But for me, what the natural thing was to almost dip a bit, and the hand went out there, all unconsciously.
How did you tighten up on that and keep your flow?
Yeah, I think a lot changed when the technique actually adjusted to the mental space of understanding my game and understanding Test cricket, and then it kind of smoothened out a bit more. Initially, and I think I see it very often when you're a lot more nervous and you know, there's a bit of anxiety running through your veins, your movements become a little bit more exaggerated. But if you manage to be in a little bit more of a still mind, then the movements are smoothed out.
All right, let's have a look at your most glorious day, perhaps. 300 against England. We've got to the vision of you going to 200 and to 300 with strokes through the offside. Did you regard yourself as an offsided player or a leg-sided player?
Shucks. I was a bad ball player, so I waited for the bad ball and tried to hit that.
Okay, but you were very strong. Beautiful, lovely cover driver in the ball, surely.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, the ball, I mean, the majority of fielders are on the offside, so you've got a sense that bowlers are trying to bowl on the first stump line, and that's where you can leave the whole day, but honestly, you're not going to score any runs. So you need to develop your game all round. Yeah, and
what's the feeling when you go to 300 in a test match?
Okay, you know,
very few
what
people
happened?
know.
Yeah, I didn't know obviously till that moment, and I did feel the nerves in the 290s. And fortunately for me, Jacques was at the other end, and he kept saying just one ball at a time, one ball at a time. But I think before that shot, I thought to myself, if it's up there, I'm going for it. So he pitched it up, I hit it, and I think Ian Bell might have been at cover, and fortunately he's of moderate height, and he didn't get to that one.
In the moment of 300, or the compiling of as many as 300, do you begin to feel yourself invincible?
No, never. I never felt invincible, because it's every ball and its moment. Every ball you got to treat it with respect, and that was one of the things I honestly, by observation, picked it up from Jacques Ellis, that you've got to watch it and give it respect. And yeah, after that.
So if you've got these triggers, right, you've got quite a big trigger back.
Yeah.
And then the little move of the left foot. How do you get the stride in to bend the front leg and be over the ball when you're driving it?
I was not fussed about the front stride. The thinking changed, I'd say, around 2007. That, you know what, I don't need to move my feet as much as people are saying you need to move your feet. The old adage of get your foot to the ball, it wasn't as, honestly, I lost that whole consciousness of that, and it was more about the head position, being strong behind the ball, and a weight transfer. So when I got into this position here, if it was pitched up, then I would just try and lean forward into it. And many times the trigger would not even move. I mean, I wouldn't move any more from the trigger. And at times I would get a little bit more. But regardless of what happened, I was not stressed about it, as long as I felt comfortable at the crease and I felt balanced.
And if you were giving, I mean, we can see a little bit more of your cover driving here. If you were giving advice to a young player about how to play these shots, driving down the ground, driving through the covers, what would that advice be?
Try and be as still as you can at the point
of
delivery.
Look at that, it's a huge stride. You can't say you don't get a stride.
I didn't say I don't get a stride. I said I was not
conscious
of trying.
That's an instinctive thing.
Exactly. It was not a big thing. Whether I got a stride or not, it made no difference to how I wanted to set up and how I wanted to play.
Oh, okay. And how would you play different innings? Sean Pollock was talking about 2018 against India, how you set up differently for, say, Ishant Sharma as against Mohammad Shami.
So I would, the Wanderers is a slightly different venue. Sorry, the high felt with the exaggerated bounce. What I did was I would speak to our analyst, Prasanna, and try and work out what's a good percentage of, what are the percentage of wickets, how they fall. And generally in those areas, caught behind was the most, was the highest percentage of how wickets fell. So I tried to find a way of negating that, but still sticking within my strengths, which is what you got to do. Like for Ishant Sharma, for example, he brought the ball into the right-hander quite a bit. So for him to get an LBW would have been tough had I been outside off stump and maybe even a little bit down the crease. The wicket keepers are unlikely to come up with bowlers like that, especially on wickets like that.
So you'd take to Ishant Sharma, you'd stand that far out of your ground?
Yeah, there were occasions where I'd take a foot extra, and I'd be, because I did have a trigger, so my trigger took me back there, but it just gave me that extra foot or so.
And what about line there? Because again, that big step back and then so set up. I just want to see, are you lined up on off stump?
So with Ishant Sharma, for example, I would bet on off stump for that innings. I'd bet on my back leg will be on off stump. And if I remember correctly, I opened up my left leg because I didn't want to hit through the covers. And if I was closed off, I felt that I would feel more inclined to get through the covers because my foot is closer to the ball. So I thought, let me hang my leg this way, out of the line, basically leg side. And if the ball's there, I'm just going to try and leave it. If it's wide, if it's forcing me to drive, I'm just going to leave it because I can't get there because the leg is too wide out.
So the nearer you get to the ball, the better chance you have of countering the ball's movement. That's your thinking.
Yeah, that's my thinking. And because it's a cat and mouse game, what the bowler's trying to do, and you've got to stick to your plan and counter it. Yes, getting closer to the ball does give you a better chance of playing it. But when you don't want to play it, for example, even if the ball was there to drive in that innings, I didn't want to drive because I felt like it was a high-risk option with the movement. So I kept my leg out of line of the ball. So even if it was there, subconsciously or consciously, I just couldn't get there. So I would just block.
I get it. So you've conditioned yourself, really. You've pre-conditioned your thinking into certain reactions. Okay, that's an interesting aspect. I just want to show you a back foot shot that Keegan Peterson played just before lunch. And I'm very impressed, with his footwork. So he's got the...
Bowling at 140, it's not a big step. It's not the textbook, take a step back and hit through the covers. No, it's a transference of weight that pushes you back. So the step is not a conscious thing. It's just the push back, and then you end up just like hopping almost a little bit back just for that extra bit of time that you're always searching for.
Yeah, and time's the key thing, isn't it? Creating time.
Wow,
what
time
were you
is
watching?
everything.
When the bowler ran in, at what point are you focusing exclusively on the ball? When it's in his hand or when he releases it?
Mark, I don't think you see the ball in the hand because of the movement is so quick through the air. You don't exclusively see the ball. It's only once he's released it that I feel you do pick it up. And sometimes if on a good day, you'll pick up which side the shiny side is on. But exclusively, no, you don't see the ball itself. And then obviously with practice and facing bowlers and things like that, you get used to when the ball's in a certain area, you're hoping that you react in an appropriate way.
The other stroke I loved of yours, that back foot one, yes, the cover drive, but that nice wristy work through mid-wicket here. Strong wrists, a very instinctive shot, isn't it?
It was an instinctive shot. Most of them were just inside edges that just looked good. But you tried to get behind it, and I think with my loop, it kind of flowed from it. So, yeah, it's a shot that, it just every batter's got one or two that's just a little bit more tailor-made for them. So I think that was one of them.
You've got some of the greatest stats in the history of the game. South Africa's highest ever score, South Africa's 9th highest ever score. You really have shone. What part of the game have you enjoyed the most? As actually, we look at these stats now. There we have it. Hashim Amla with 311 against England at the Oval, and Hashim Amla with 253 against India in Nagpur. Some amazing names there, De Villiers and Graham Pollock amongst them. A lot of sort of really genius batsmen. What would you say has been the greatest thrill for you in batting?
When you time the ball and it's the middle of the bat, it's like someone putting a chocolate in your mouth. You feel it in the whole body.
Your whole body feels.
Yeah, dark chocolate is great. Yeah.
So it's this moment, isn't it, where where the absolute meat of the bat meets the ball here.
Yes.
It sort of springs off it.
Firstly, you've got to have a good bat. There's no doubt about that. And when you hit it, and it, we often say the cherry in the middle. I wonder, maybe because cherries are sweet as well, that the cherry in the middle and that feeling just runs through your body. I mean, you hit so many in the nets, which is nice. But when you play it in the game, it's just added joy.
Wonderful insight. Wonderful to chat. We have to go because in these COVID days, we need to clear the pitch. Hashim Amla, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Nice, yeah, nice, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I saw a lot of his journey. Obviously, I was involved in Natal, and there was one thing that came through was about his application and his mindset. When he got in, you weren't going to get him out. His brother actually looked like a more technically efficient kind of player and sweeter on the eye. But mentally, Hashim, sure, once he gets in, he got some big scores. He got some big hundreds before he ended up being picked for South Africa, and it showed. Only person to get 300.
Yeah, Ronaldo, Sachin, they're saying still watchable, enjoying watching him. You say something there where someone else's brother looking technically better, and yet the guy who kind of goes all the way isn't necessarily there. Talk a bit about technique, because that's what he was on about as well, right? Saying it's not about the step, but more, I guess, about what it does and where he's trying to be in position and kind of technique and cricket and kind of how difficult it is to get to where you need to.
Yeah, I think mentality is more important at times than talent at what you've got. And once you've worked your game plan out, I think that's also key. I think that's what Hashim did brilliantly throughout his career. And as he says, his feet maybe didn't used to get into huge positive positions, but his weight distribution was good. He got into those areas and able to put the batters under pressure. And I think what's not appreciated enough, we're going to see some highlights here, obviously, of him. If you had said to me when Hashim burst onto the scene for the Dolphins, write a synopsis of his career when he retires, I might have said he would have achieved what he did in the Test arena. I wouldn't have predicted what he did in the one-day arena. I mean, he almost averaged 50 in the one-day arena at a strike rate of 95. And when he first came in, people say, "Oh, he's a bit slow," But he adapted his game unbelievably brilliantly to the shorter format, and I think that's where the real kudos need to go.
I remember that at the start of his career, he gets into the Test side, but he used to kind of fill in as a one-day player, and it was Smith and Gibbs, I think it was, and for a long time despite him sort of striking at 100, which he did, like at the beginning, even more, I think, he just couldn't get in the side doing well, and him kind of waiting his turn as a youngster. Anyway, that was Hashim Amla.
He looks better in a suit these days.
He'll disagree. He's getting himself ready for the county season. I know it's some time away, but he'll get himself ready.
That's